Welcome to another episode of Ask Ross, a Q&A financial education show. I try and do my best to answer your questions each week. If you have a question, be sure to call in, hit me up on Instagram, either comment on one of the posts or shoot me a direct message, and I'll try and do my best to answer your questions for you. So today's episode, I've got 3 questions, either from social media or people that have come across this week that asked me a couple of questions, and I want to try and bring them to you, and I hope you enjoy the show. Question number 1 for today's episode comes from Brett, someone that I spoke to this week, and his question reads, I've recently started a new job. How do I know if I'm getting paid correctly? And how does my employer know how much tax to deduct from me? Brett, thanks for the question. Good luck with the new job. Hope it's a good change for you. So the first thing that you need to work out is would get a recent pay slip. So obviously if you've just started, you might only get paid fortnightly or monthly, depending on what your employer's relationship or arrangement is. So get a recent pay slip or ask your payroll for a pay slip. And what you want to work out on there, usually it'll say your annual salary, so I'm sure you would have negotiated that before you took the job. So it'll have your annual salary, but then it'll have a breakdown. So let's assume you work weekly, or you're going to be working weekly. It'll have your hours worked for that week, so whether that's 38 or depending on how many hours you work. And then it should give you a breakdown of your hourly rate. So even though you're getting paid an annual salary, they'll work out what your hourly rate is. So what you want to look at is your hours worked for the week or for the fortnight, and then times that by your hourly rate, and that will give you a gross amount. So what you want to check is that obviously if you're working weekly, times that weekly amount by 52 or 48, depending on how many holidays you get, and that should give you a gross amount, and give or take a few numbers, that should give you close to your annual salary, depending on if you've got any salary sacrifice arrangements or different holiday structures. So the next thing you asked was around tax, and how they work out how much tax to deduct each week. So what they'll do is they'll either have an accounting software set up, an accounting system, so the payroll department, and they will just enter in your weekly gross earnings, and that will just give them a breakdown in terms of how much tax to deduct or withhold and send to the tax office on your behalf, and then how much money to pay you, so your net earnings. So what will affect this is if you have any HECS owing, and also obviously any holiday pay or any salary sacrifice or any car car entitlements or extra travel allowances that might change that slightly. But again, talk to your payroll department. They'll be able to explain all this to you. Jump onto Money Smart and search for an income tax calculator. It should be under there, calculator and tools, and enter in your weekly earnings or your fortnightly earnings, and that should give you your breakdown of tax and Medicare and obviously different levies that you have to pay, and that should give you your net earnings. So just compare what you're getting at the moment, compare it to that, and if there's any discrepancies or any major differences, take it to your payroll. But obviously you've just started work, so maybe give it a week or two to make sure things settle in properly. The second question on today's episode came from Sam on Instagram. Sam, thanks heaps for the question. Hope you find this answer useful. The question from Sam, he reads, I got an email this week from my bank that's asked me to sign up to the NPP system. What is this, and should I do it? So Sam, this is something that's recently come out, and I actually got the same email from my bank this week. And what the NPP is the new payment platform. So it's something that all the major banks in Australia are adopting, and I believe it's something they've been working on for about 2 years now. And what it is basically a new way of money getting transferred between banks and between accounts. So at the moment, or before this came in, you would know that banks, if you want to transfer from ANZ to Commonwealth or Commonwealth to Westpac or whatever it is, if you make a transfer, it usually takes 2 or 3 business days. If it's the first time you've ever transferred to this other bank or another person, it'll take 2 or 3 business days for it to transfer across. And this obviously can be very frustrating, and especially if you do it on a Friday, then you've got the weekend to account for, and then the payment can only get made or received maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. So this makes paying bills or paying friends or however you do it, if you're transferring money between your accounts, can make this very painful. But basically what they've done is they've created a system where if I make a transfer to you, so if I bank with Commonwealth and you bank with Westpac, if I make a transfer 24/7, whatever day it is, whether it's weekends, public holidays, it doesn't matter, you will receive that money in your bank account instantly. The final question on today's episode came from Nikki on Instagram. Let's check out what Nikki had to say. Nikki asked, I finished university a few years ago. I've been working full-time ever since. I think I've paid off all my HECS debt. First of all, how do I find out what I have owing, if any? And secondly, if I don't have any HECS owing, how do I get my employer to stop deducting HECS payments from my pay each week? Nikki, thanks heaps for the question. Obviously, something that affects a lot of us that if we've gone to university, started working, so it's definitely a valid question and something I've got received the same question a lot of times. So what the first thing you want to do is to obviously find out how much HECS you have owing, if any, and what you want to do for that is to log into your MyGov account. So if you don't have a MyGov account, it's a pretty simple process if you've got all your bank cards or Medicare numbers with you. So jump onto mygov.gov or .com, I'm not sure exactly, and create an account if you don't have one, and you'll be able to link the ATO system or service into your MyGov account, and that will show up your HECS, and you'll be able to see there if you have any HECS owing. So jump on there first of all and find out what you do have owing, and if you don't have any, then go to your payroll department and you want to ask them for a tax declaration form. So when you first started with your employer, you would have had to fill out a tax declaration form, and there would have been a box to tick to say, do you have any higher education debt or any HECS debt? And at the time, I'm assuming you would have ticked yes. So then your employer over the number of years would have been deducting HECS on your behalf and obviously paying that down each year. So if you don't have any HECS left, then what you want to do is go to your payroll department and ask them for a new tax declaration form, and obviously tick no when you fill out the new form, tick no to any HECS debt, and then give that to your payroll department, and they will be able to change that for your next pay. So it might take 1 or 2 weeks for that to rectify in their back end, but you'll see that in your next pay that you won't have any HECS debt coming out. So obviously you're going to have an increased take-home income, which depending on whatever your goals are is up to you what you do with that, but definitely try and do that as quick as possible if you have no HECS debt owing, because obviously more money in your back pocket the better. So thanks a lot for that question, Nikki. If you have any questions in the future, be sure to shoot them through to me. And that goes for everyone. That's a wrap for today's Ask Ross episode. If you have any questions about some of the answers I've given previously, or if your own personal questions, be sure to call in, comment below, shoot me a message on Instagram. So if you can find me on Instagram, just at Ross Marais, so that's Marais, and I'll try and do my best to answer those questions for you. But as always, stay tuned for next week's episode.